can start now.
Good afternoon, teachers. I'm Clive, and my partner Edriane and I are from class JP02, and today we'll be doing In the War 2 Heritage Tour for our RJ2. This is what we'll be going over today for our video. Firstly, why does this tour interest us? We both have a sense of interest on historical events and history due to our passion for the history subjects in secondary school. Secondly, the War II Heritage Trail is not well known and interesting among Singaporeans, especially those of today, as they rather live in the future than in the past. So we would like to share and show more about it. Thirdly, this trail is very important as it portrays certain events and the different perspectives between the attacking Japanese forces and the Britain-Australian Defence Forces during the first attacks, as some Singaporeans might blame the Britain-Australian Defence Forces for not properly defending Singapore, which led to its fall, but we also need to understand their reasoning behind it. Lastly, not many people know about this trail, so we would like to do our part on sharing about this trail and preserving of its historical value in Singapore, as it is an integral part of Singapore's history.
Next, what is the trail about in the context of Singapore history? Firstly, this trail is about all the historical sites and events associated with the Battle of Singapore and the Japanese occupation. These historical landmarks and events are of considerable significance in their relation to the war in Singapore. This trail gives us the insights of the periods in Singapore from British colonial rule to the Battle of Singapore and during the Japanese occupation. This trail will show us the efforts made by the defending Allies forces and the attacking Imperial Japanese forces that will eventually lead to the Singapore's independence and its development into modern Singapore as we know today. Additionally, it gives us the insights as to why Singapore developed a strong desire of independence and could no longer solely rely on the British colonial rule. Because of Singapore independence, British defensive troops were withdrawn from Singapore. This led to the implementation of the National Service in order to build up Singapore defensive forces without placing a heavy burden on the country's financial and manpower resources.
Me and my partner decided to talk about the Kranji War Cemetery for the heritage trip. So some context behind the Kranji War Cemetery. It began as a small cemetery started by the prisoners, which was later endorsed by the Army Grave Service after the reoccupation of Singapore in 1946. It was officially opened on 2nd March 1957 with officials from Singapore, Britain, and other Commonwealth countries in attendance. It was also originally an ammunition depot that became a prisoner of war camp and hospital. The reason this place impresses me, as it shows that despite the horrendous things that might have happened on its land, the deaths that might have taken place here due to its role as a prisoner of war camp, Singapore, it can still look beyond that and give new meaning to it as a place where soldiers are laid to rest and not where they were killed. It also does put into perspective how gruesome and bloodthirsty the war must have been to take the lives of so many men, and why we must prevent this from ever happening again.
Additionally, this place represents all the men and women from Britain, Australia, Canada, Sri Lanka, India, Malaya, the Netherlands, and New Zealand who had died in the line of duty during World War II. Thus, this is the memorial ground to honor the dead. This place serves as a reminder of the lives lost during the war and gives a reason why that we need to prevent another war from happening again. The Kranji War Cemetery bears the names of over 24,000 casualties of the Commonwealth land and air forces who have no known graves, and some have no date of death and are accorded within our records the date or period from when they were known to be missing or captured. It amazes me that these young men and women gave their lives to love and fight a common enemy, and the missing or the unknown death of many soldiers' names are as well put in the memorial grounds to honor their bravery and contributions.
Next, our interviews. For my interviewee, I interviewed my secondary school history teacher, Mr. Tay, who is in his early 30s. For the first question, I asked him, how did he think the place relates to the context of Singapore's history? He thought it was a good place to learn about Singapore's link to World War II and the impact of the war on Singapore. My second question, what did he think about the place? for example, what he saw, the environment, etc., etc. He liked the symbolic meaning behind the design of the memorial, and it was a clear demonstration of the negatives of war and the human sacrifices of that war. Lastly, my final question, what did he think the place served as a reminder as to why Singapore needed to defend itself so that the tragedy did not repeat itself? He thought that it did not serve as a reminder to Singapore's need to defend itself, but rather that we should avoid war entirely and not try to instigate one, and that we should not try to repeat another war as the human cost was simply too great.
In my interview, I interviewed my history teacher, Mr. Arman, who is 56 years old. The first question I asked him that, what can we learn from visiting this place? He said that war is hell. War is an atrocious way to rectify our differences, and it must be eluded at all costs. There are many ways to de-escalate tensions and disagreements, but war must not be the first option, but it must be our last resort. The second question I said to him that, what is your opinions about this memorial place? He said that this place gave him a unforgettable, poignant feeling, and the cemetery is beautifully maintained, and he got a chance to get a better understanding of the monumental sacrifices made by the young men and women during the war. On the third question, I asked that, do you think this place serves as a reminder as to why Singapore needs to defend itself so that this event does not repeat itself? He said, and I quote, no, in my opinion, it does not serve as a reminder of the need Singapore defending itself, but rather the peace we achieve today has a grim history at the cost of human lives of the people in the line of duty during the war.
So the next part are wonder questions. My first wonder question, were all the people who were buried there, did they have that much dedication to die for our country, or were they simply forced and had no other choice? My second question, what did these people think in their last moments? Were they content with dying for the country at that time and place, or did they have regrets about leaving their loved ones behind? My third question, how gruesome the war must have been, as numerous graves did not even have names on them, and many of the deceased were young men below 20 years old, with the youngest I found only being 16.
And my wonder questions is that for those who fought and survived the war, I wonder what changes did the war change them as a person? A new perspective in life, beliefs, or opinions? Secondly, what was the driving factor of the local volunteers whom have died as to why they wanted to give their lives to Singapore? As that time, Singapore has not yet has its own identity and people were divided by the race. Thirdly, why and what was the driving reason of the locals living in Singapore back then to have a strong urgency to become an independent nation, leaving the British colonial rule behind?
Final part, what impact the journey had on us as a citizen and understanding of Singapore's heritage. It made me appreciate our forefathers more, knowing how much they struggled for us to live a better life. Secondly, the journey made me understand more on Singapore's past from the war, its tragedy, and why it made Singapore instill new policies to bolster our defences, like national service, for example. And thirdly, it made me feel more proud of the country, knowing that despite struggles so much in the past, it came back even stronger than before.
And as a citizen and a nation, we should wear our scars proudly. It is because that all these atrocities and hardships of our nation had experienced in the past, it teaches us and guided us about the present as well, and it reinforced the unity amongst us Singaporean citizens. The trail is a staple point that we should be appreciative and be proud of the fighting spirits whom have died, remembering their names and honor them as well. Also, we citizens should learn how to come into agreement and shake the enemy's hand. Without it, tensions and discriminations will arise between nations. There were no winners in the war. Each side suffered a considerable amount of casualties. Thus, we should not let our beliefs and actions of hatred from our past pioneers prevent us from being proudly accepting of the different nations and cultures. As for now, as citizens globally, we will never forget the horrors of war, but being appreciative of our new formed allies. Here's our resume page,
Thank
and thank you.
you very much.